Welcome, everyone. Would love to call this meeting to order at 6:41 a.m. Great to see everyone and glad that we can be here. Thank you, Commissioner Reese, for making it possible for Commissioner Cabrera to also join.
Oh,
And
yeah,
also,
appreciate it.
would like
You're
to
very welcome. You're very welcome.
really appreciate it. Our first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our July 2nd meeting. Can I have a motion to
I move to approve the minutes.
I second it.
Great, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Thank you. And none of the negative. Great. So item number 3 on the agenda, new business, current research projects. Really glad to see Leticia on the team join us. I assume this is your portion of the agenda.
Yes, it is.
Great.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioner Cerise. It is certainly my pleasure to share with you some of the research projects that we are currently pursuing, and I'm going to share my screen and make sure that everyone can see. So I'm going to share with you just a brief overview of where we are with our research projects. And in subsequent meetings, I understand that I may have the opportunity to drill down a little bit further. But I'm going to start off with a high-level overview of our project, talking firstly about the audit scorecard, our strategic annual planning document, the progress that we've made on local Law 13, how we are establishing benchmarks for separations, even though this project is in its pending status, and then a look at best practices on EEO around the country. In starting off with our audit impact metrics, this is really our external look at our auditing process and really helping us to assess whether or not we've moved the needle on EEO programs in New York City entities. So I'm going to start off by saying that we do value the nuanced approaches to EEO that our entities engage. So when we started with the establishment of the scorecard, the first thing that we did was to assess what are the applicable compliance criteria. We have right at about 100 or so compliance criteria. So that's where we started. And in that first column, you see that that number represents the applicable compliance criteria for each respective entity. As you see, some of the entities started off at a fairly good position, like the Financial Information Services Agency. They started off with right at about 80 of the compliance criteria satisfied by the PD stage. But then there were others like the Office of Emergency Management that started off right at about 45 satisfied by the PD stage. But I'm very happy to share, as you know, that we were able to move all of the entities to 100% compliance by the end of the auditing cycle, which demonstrates that the EEPC is helping New York City entities to move the needle. We also want to assess internally, how do we do? So our internal scorecard gives us the opportunity to sharpen our saw. We want to look at the length of time that's needed to complete audits. We also want to know how many submissions are the analysts sharing with the co-managers and or legal. If there are bottlenecks in the auditing process or areas for additional training that are needed, this is what we want to know. We want to know, are we consistent and reliable in our auditing process? And that's what this internal card affords us the opportunity to do. Moving right along, the strategic annual planning document is a new document that we put in place this year with the support of my colleagues. We looked at the establishment of an online repository for all of our compliance mandates. And as you see, this one document allows us to track in real time all of the expectations that we must meet, whether we are dealing with local law mandates, the charter mandates, or other projects such as our EEO plan, quarterly reports, COIB compliance, annual reports. All of this information is housed in this one electronic document that everyone is able to contribute. The beautiful thing,
Excuse
Yes.
me, it is very difficult for us to see anything on a computer. Could I ask that is this be either sent after this meeting or sent in some manner where it will be legible? Neither Angela or I
Yeah.
are able to read it. I apologize for
Yeah.
interrupting, but it's interesting to hear what you're talking
Yes,
about,
yeah.
but impossible for us to see it.
absolutely.
Thank you.
It's unbelievable.
So the document that you see represented before you, I'll do a little bit better in explaining what's on the screen. This is a representation of the annual strategic planning document and how we're able to extract data to comply with respective mandates. So we extracted this information from the strategic annual planning document, and we're able to create the EEO annual report of activities. So again, the benefit is having all of the documents in one place, and then when appropriate, we can generate reports to satisfy mandates and compliance.
Can I interject
And that's
for a
what's
second?
here.
Can I interject? Commissioners, this is a document that's internally facing. It's a document that I felt was necessary to sort of track all of the various projects or laws or responsibilities that the EPC has to comply with on an annual basis. So what we did was we put every single, issue that we have to comply with in one document. It's a running document, it's chronological, so that, let's say in March, we can look forward and we can say, okay, what are all the things we're responsible for in March? So that we can be sure that we remain on track. The beauty of it is that when I leave, or if another executive director comes in, or if we have a change in staff, there's one single repository where everyone knows exactly what they're responsible for, and that will continue and provide continuity for the projects that are going on in the agency.
Teresa, is this an internal document, and is it secure, or is it a public document, and can anyone look at it at any time?
It's an internal document, and we introduced it for efficiency internally.
So it is not a
Yeah,
public
yeah.
document and therefore not. Now, the next question is it accessible by FOIA?
I don't see why it would be. It's about the inner workings of our processes.
So it's still a working document and never complete?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Leticia, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now I'm just going to provide a high-level look at the progress that we've made on addressing Local Law 13. And really, this is just to
Again, to refresh our memory, this is the rule that now has us undertaking other duties, activities. Is that correct?
yes,
Local Law 13 calls for the APC to report underutilization citywide
Wow.
per agency for the next 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And this,
Provide recommendations.
yes, and this, our original reaction to it is that we needed to have someone with some knowledge of labor economics to be able to do that, and that we do not have a person that is solely proficient in that. Is that correct?
Well, the two positions we identified was labor economist and a statistician. Leticia has some data science background, and she has a breadth of knowledge of EEO. So
I understand that, but we don't have somebody where
Yes,
there's direct skill set. Okay, that's all. I really was, for purposes of the meeting, just clarifying my understanding.
right.
Thank you.
Okay, Leticia.
Okay, so some of the key performance indicators that we are addressing in looking at underutilization. Of course, we're looking at it by entity, job group, and racial ethnicity groups. But we also wanted to look at the underutilization risk factors over this 10-year period. So certainly we want to know, has there been persistent underutilization over this period? We also want to look at the rate of change from year to year. We want to look at recent underutilization to see if within the past 3 years there has been underutilization. And then lastly, looking at underutilization within the last year. We also want to know how the entities have responded to our corrective action. So this affords us the opportunity to go back into our audit and look to see if the entity was cited for underutilization. We also want to look at the entity's effort. And this is told to us by reviewing their annual plans and quarterly reports. We want to know if the entity has capitalized on opportunity factors such as hiring, separations, and promotions. So again, this is a high-level look at the approach that we are currently engaged in as it relates to Local Law 13.
Right.
Assuming for a moment, and this is perhaps a fallacious assumption, that the mayor's threat that by October, if he does not receive additional funds from the federal authorities, the state having no money, that he will have to reduce citywide staff by some 22,000 people.
Yeah.
Will this look at whether that reduction in staff favors or disfavors underutilization? Or we won't know that until we finish?
Commissioner Reese, this is something that I would love to talk with the executive director about in particular, given really like what sort of analysis is appropriate. The threats are the threats, and I think we all see them in the news. But and again, just I think agencies still are not 100% clear as to what exactly is happening. My understanding is that next week there'll be some concrete decisions made around the prospects of layoffs with about a month of notice for staff. And so I think at the time of separation or as leading up to October, it would be helpful for us to talk about what sort of analysis could be done that aligns with all the commission's already done to systematize data analysis consistent with Local Law 13, and sort of what sort of snapshot in time sort of separation data we could look at. I think that would be, given depending on capacity of the team, a really important thing to look at, consistent with all of this work already.
Right, and we're going to get into that in a second.
One question, Leticia, does this pie chart have metrics associated with it?
It really doesn't at this juncture, but that is exactly by the time we finish this process, we'll be able to look at those entities that has the most egregious cases of underutilization. So when we're done with the analysis, the pie chart will have metrics that are associated with it. So in follow-up to the question that was just raised, while this particular research study is in its pending status, I did want to share just a high-level look at separations data. This would really be a basis for the establishment of a baseline relative to separations. And so we looked at the data from 2013 to 2020. And again, the first thing that we were able to see is that men are separating at a higher rate than women, and that the highest rate of separation as far as race, ethnicity is concerned over this time period has been for Blacks at about a consistent rate of about 40%. So we will,
I'm interrupting again, but is that Black men necessarily?
So it is Blacks overall, but because the men are the highest gender, I could surmise that, but I would have to go back into the data to drill down just a little bit further to say Black men.
But with that, this is just a strange shooting from my hip question. Would that mean that when you look at it, that Black men might have been in a higher percentage, and therefore you're increasing Black women, or you're increasing Asian men, or do we have some way of looking at whether that is at a cost, in addition to another group gaining, and that this cost is met with the other groups gaining?
Sure, I appreciate the question. Again, we would have to drill down just a little bit further to see what the direct impacts are. And there are reports that allow us to understand hiring impacts, promotion impacts. But again, at a first glance, it just tells us overall. The data is just telling us overall what the highest rates of separation are. But as I drill down into the data a little bit further, I'll be able to share additional insights.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That would be very interesting.
And I'll just interject that separations, the term separations is rather broad. It includes retirement, resignation, layoff, things of that nature. So even drilling into separations and seeing what categories those ethnicities fall under would be a task in itself. So
Also would be interested in looking at it, if we can, by individual agencies. And the dominant groups in the workforce in the city are the uniformed workmen, uniformed officers. I would be interested to see what the phenomena is in the fire department and the phenomena within the police department.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, I want to share with you some of the EEO practices that we are exploring around the country. And again, this is providing the EEPC an opportunity to learn from our peer cities. So what you're looking at is a process that we use to establish some preliminary variables for analysis. We were looking at cities that were similarly sized and similarly complex. So we looked at population, mass transit. We looked to see if they had a city charter, if employment provisions were explicitly mentioned in the charter, whether anti-discrimination was included. So again, these are some of the measures that we use to assess best practices around the country to see what information we can learn. One of the interesting findings was it appears as though New York City is the only city that's currently engaged in auditing EEO practices. So again, this is a high-level look at best practices in EEO around the country. We will continue to drill down into this to see what information we can glean and learn from our sister cities around the country.
Is there any value to us using that as a story, Sharice and clearly to the commissioners to talk about what benefit we are providing by doing EEO evaluation?
that's the purpose. That's the purpose of
Yes.
because I think it's one thing to say that we're unique, but when we have data pointing to the fact that we're a unique entity and the value that we bring to the city, which pairs with, if we go back to the previous research project that we're calling the audit impact metrics, where we show how we have helped agencies obtain compliance, then we begin to paint a picture of our value to the city of New York and the value in having an agency like the EEO. So,
Does it make some sense for us to try to do an early piece of PR on this because we are facing downsizing and we are so tiny and provide this kind of value, notwithstanding the fact that it is preventative as to litigation on wrongful terminations or illegal terminations or even illegal suspensions. Is there some value in trying to do it now rather than waiting to do it later? Anyway, I just pose that as a question, and we need not resolve it today, and we can discuss it at, fuller at another meeting. But it seems to me that we have the data in hand.
That's
Why
wonderful,
wait?
yeah.
Well, the thing is that we're trying to do it now, but we're trying to do it in a climate where we're doing so much with so little that it depends on where our priorities are in terms of
Doing so
projects
much
that
with so little,
discussing.
it may be smaller than so little if we don't try to protect what we've got. And this is a way of protecting it. At least I think so.
Right. We'll talk about this further when we go into executive session, because I'll give you some updates on some previous some steps that I've previously taken in terms of the budget stuff and our most recent steps and strategies.
Mhm.
So we'll speak about it a little more in executive session.
Well, this
Great
concludes,
question. Great question.
this concludes the presentation that that I have to talk about our high-level research projects. And if there are any additional questions I can answer, I'm happy to do those at this time.
I want to thank you very, very much for what I think is, if I could see it, a very fine presentation. Certainly has given rise to several different questions on my part. I apologize once more for interrupting, but I really do think it's certainly putting us in the right, in the right steps to go forward. And so I thank you for your hard labors.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leticia.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you again. Have a great day.
Thank you.
This really doesn't do anything, so.
Hi, Jen. Good to see you. Thank you for that. I know the question around sort of a whole host of research projects that the commission was driving came up at a previous meeting. So really glad that we had an opportunity to dig in. Thank you for all of your work. I think to the question around sort of communicating some of this out, it feels urgent to be able to, even in a small way, share the extensiveness of the work of the commission to continue to ensure that it's fully seen, especially in a moment where there's so much change with the workforce in general, and then potentially some implications for the commission itself around the work that's being done. So really glad that we got to see that. So now we can jump to agenda item 4, audit update. Item A, status of sexual harassment prevention and response practices audits.
But, it's just.
So we'll talk about status before we go to.
So I'm happy to say that the EPC has, at this juncture, completed about 74% of the PDs and about 60% of the FDs for the current audits. Given the climate that we're in, we're doing the best that we can. I think that by the next meeting, we should have everything complete, and we have about 18 entities in compliance monitoring. So we should have more. We're slowly chipping away, but I think that we're making progress, and I'm proud because we're a small group and we're doing a lot. So if the analysts were listening, or if they are listening, I would really want to commend them. But so we have about 13 final determinations on the agenda today for the commission members to vote on. And we can get right into that.
Any questions about that update?
I want to commend everybody for working as hard, having read today, I guess, in the city, that the Department of Motor Vehicles is not functioning at all, so that nobody can seem to get any one of their licenses. And since you need a license or some identification to be able to vote, it's even more confounding. So I want to thank you all for functioning under the worst of, under the most dire of circumstances.
Yes, thank you. I think it means a lot for them to hear the accolades.
Yeah, it's a tremendous amount of work. Thank you for the update. So let's go to, as Cherie said, 13 items up for vote. I will spare you my voice to read each and every one, but as you'll see in item B, we have resolutions numbers 1 through 13 with a host of city agencies, all final determinations, and they're included in the packet.
I can read them for you if you like.
Okay, that's fine.
We have the Department of Transportation. Should I read the resolution number?
That's a, in terms of practice, I'm not sure what, it's probably good to have it on the record.
Okay.
So I should retract my,
No, I'll do it if your voice is shaky. So resolution number 2020 AP 241-841 2020 Department of Transportation. Resolution 2020 AP 241-125 2020 Department for the Aging. Resolution 2020 AP 241-054 2020 Civilian Complaint Review Board. Resolution 2020 AP 241 943 2020 Kings County Public Administrator. Resolution 2020 AP 241 214 2020 Office of Labor Relations. Resolution 2020 AP 241 541 2020 Board of Education Retirement System. Resolution 2020 AP 241 463 2020 Bronx Community College. Resolution 2020 AP 241 820 2020 Office of Administration Trials. Resolution 2020 AP 241 013 2020 Office of the Queensborough President. Resolution 2020 AP 241 826 2020 Department of Environmental Protection. Resolution 2020 AP 241 740 2020 Department of Education. Resolution 2020 AP 241 057 2020 New York City Fire Department. Resolution 2020 AP 241 468 2020 Hostos Community College.
thank you. Can I have a motion to approve?
Approved.
Can I have a second?
Second? I'll second. I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. And we,
Here,
I'm sorry.
I said there are 2 votes from here.
Great. And we, looks like we don't have any abstentions. Great. Thank you all. Thank you to the team at the commission for the tremendous work on the sexual harassment prevention audits. Item number 5 on the agenda, compliance update. So let's go to a status of 2019 and 2020 audit plan compliance monitoring.
So I'm happy to say that the 2019 audits are all completed. We have issued compliance resolutions.
Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah.
We have, yes, it's very good news. We've issued compliance resolutions to all but one. And the only reason that one particular agency has not gotten its resolution yet is because they still have to distribute the final action memo. But they've implemented all of their corrective actions, so we anticipate that will be taken care of at the next meeting. It's just a matter of timing. So I think that I consider all of the 2019 audits completely, according to our standards of issuance of a certificate of compliance.
Our definition of completion, right, is that they've completed compliance monitoring and they've implemented all of their corrective actions. The comptroller's definition of completing is issuing a final determination. So we differ.
We did that for the 2019 audit plan quite a while ago. So for the 2020 audit plan, we have 34 audits on the plan. As of now, there are 18 in compliance monitoring and 2 have already completed compliance monitoring. We anticipate a whole bunch more, hopefully at the next meeting. We have outstanding 14 that haven't gotten into compliance monitoring yet, but I think that the delays are really kind of outside of our control. Agencies have limited staff, their resources are diverted to other things in their EEO office given the current climate. We have 2 brand new analysts, one who only was able to just get access to the documents because they're confidential, and we're trying to do remote training as well. So I think when you look at it in its totality, we've made really great progress on this year's audit plan. I think the analysts have been doing a fantastic job, and I think that by our next meeting, we will have most, if not all, of the agencies into compliance monitoring at that point.
Jen, you're trying to say, Commissioner Reese, please don't be hard on us if we don't make our numbers. I think that's implicit in what you're saying. And
I think honestly, we will make our numbers. We will make our numbers this year. I think we have 18 compliance resolutions already issued this year, and I think by the end of the year, we will hit our numbers.
you definitely will then require a gold badge.
We remain optimistic as always.
I'm sure you're going to do it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think that our team is really working hard given the limitations that have been placed upon us because of the remote working situation and the uncertainty, you know, in general, people are working with more outside pressures in their personal lives. And I think the team has really rallied together and has tried to come forward and make our agency proud and doing the best that we can and to prove that we're worth every single employee because we're all doing
Working hard.
outstanding work.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
With that update, let's move to a vote. I will do these.
Do you want me to read them?
No, it's
is there
fine.
something?
It's fine. I just, we should make sure that everything is on the record. Yeah, I'm happy
I
to.
mean, I can read them if you want me to.
It's totally fine. Item B, under compliance update 2020 compliance resolutions, there are 5 up for vote. Number 1, resolution 2019 AP 24109, 2020 C4, New York City Employees Retirement System. Item 2, resolution 2019 AP 24186, 2020 C15, Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. Number 3, resolution 2019 AP 24167, 2020 C16, Administration for Children's Services. Number 4, resolution 2019 AP 241998, 2020 C17, New York City Economic Development Corporation. And last, number 5, resolution 2020 41226, 2020 C18, New York City Commission on Human Rights.
I move to have them approved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
Yeah, second.
Thank you, Commissioners Reese and Carrera. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Any abstentions? Okay. Thank you all. Thank you so much to the team for the updates, research, and status of the work. Really, really appreciate seeing the full breadth of all that the team is holding. And with that, we'll transition to executive session.